Now for what's trending in true crime, a Denver college professor is waking up behind bars this morning after his wife and infant daughter were found dead in their home. 44-year-old Myklebust was taken into custody Monday after calling 911. Police say they found his wife on the floor bleeding and their infant daughter not breathing. Detectives say that the suspect told them that his wife fell off of a stepladder, but say that her injuries were inconsistent with a fall. They also noticed bruising and blood on his knuckles, along with scratches on his chest and his neck. Myklebust told them that he has psoriasis and he scratches himself a lot. Now, to be clear, he has not been criminally charged. He's being held on suspicion in the case of the death of his wife and his daughter. So we'll keep you posted if anything is filed. Right now, we're asking the question, do you believe this guy's excuses about his wife falling off the stepladder and the scratches because of psoriasis? Let's bring in our power panel now. Still with me, psychotherapist and the CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey, and high-profile criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, Michael J. Brown. Oh, what do we think about the professor? Dr. Janie, would you start us off, please?
Well, what I think about what I'm hearing about the professor is there's definitely something that's not right here. So when we look at that his family has turned up and they're no longer here and he's at the center of this, you know, I'm wondering exactly what his mental health issues may be, his lack of empathy and compassion for potentially hurting those that he's loved, and what is his history here? Because especially if there's this level of him coming up with this narrative to try to remove himself from the harm that his family has suffered, you know, there's definitely more to this story. And I would want to be looking into his mental health history and his previous relationship history, especially around violence and abuse.
Yeah, I would love to know the same. Apparently the child was found on a bed inside the bedroom, pronounced dead, but no visible injury. So this is what makes this case even more unusual. Court documents, you know, showing that, you know, he's got a lot of bruising on his body, on his knuckles, the blood. Michael J. Brown, what are you thinking? This guy talking, he's saying a lot. My first reaction was this guy is not a criminal procedure professor. He teaches English, looked it up, because he is talking to police. What do you think about what he's saying? Is this believable?
Actually, and you know, the first thing that we do obviously is we put the police and the detectives on notice and say, you are not able to speak to my client because they never help themselves. And this is a classic case. I think the evidence is, and again, I haven't seen anything. I'm just reviewing what's out there in the press, but it's overwhelming in the sense that the wife is dead with some significant trauma to her body, and he has bloodied and swollen knuckles. He has what we look as defensive marks in the sense of she obviously it looks like she was scratching and trying to defend herself against him. And then you have a young infant child that's dead and there's no external injuries, which will, obviously the autopsy is going to be significant, and I would expect that there's either suffocation or there's some significant blows to the head internally. So all of that is going to be devastating to the defendant. But again, I haven't seen anything, but him opening his mouth never helps.
No, not at all, not at all. Be quiet. Call Michael J. Brown. That's what you do. So this guy, apparently, you know, he said his relationship with his wife was great. You know, he told police that, said they had been a bit, you know, sad, and the baby was more fussy than usual, and they had been depressed since a personal loss in 2021, according to the Denver Post reporting this. And we learned that that loss was another infant child, only 9 days old. So the couple's first child dies in 2021 after suffering skull fractures. No charges were filed in that case. Right now, the autopsy is being done on the couple's second child and on the suspect's wife. Should police go back and re-examine the first child's death? Michael, what do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Again, I don't want to jump the gun, and I want to afford everybody the presumption of innocence. But you have a prior infant that was also died. I would love for them to look into, and I'm sure they will look into the CPS records, any of the autopsy results, because if a young child died, I'm sure they did an autopsy. And even if they have to, unfortunately, exhume that body, to go back and look at the skull, because it seems, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it seems as though there's a pattern here, and I think that could be very helpful from an evidentiary standpoint in the prosecution of this case.
Great points, Michael. I think we could probably assume he's going to have a mental health evaluation as he's hit the jail. Michael, you know how that's standard. Dr. Janey, curious what you'd be most interested to know from that evaluation. Essentially, what questions might you have for this professor?
Well, we definitely would want to do a battery of tests looking at his personality disorder, because that would be a key, especially if there's a certain level of detachment to persons of family of origin. We'd want to look at his history and his abuse history, his previous relationships dynamics, and then his just what we would call his attachment to primary figures in his life. And because the most important person who could probably offer some insight in his intimate relationship is no longer here, especially because he can create this narrative and tell us that he had a great marriage and these types of things. So the people that will be closest to him and how he exaggerates his relationships with them and previous relationships will matter too. So this is somebody who would definitely need a battery of tests, but his tester or evaluator or psychologist, there would have to be some level of building of trust with him as we would evaluate him.